just to be completely honest with you guys, I was gonna do a complete montage, but in the end, this song just kept going around in my head the entire time I was recording. Okay, please play. So, I'll stop. But yes, Memory from Cats is pretty much the soundtrack for this tag. Hey guys, so I'm here with, it's kind of a tag, I think it's called the Bookish Memories tag, and I consider myself tagged by Jen from Reading with Pugs because she basically told me that she expected me to do this video, so here I am. I actually watched her video and I thought it was such a fantastic video idea. It's basically, you go through your shelves and you pick out books that have particularly strong memories attached to them. And I could have been here all day, but I tried to pick the books that really spoke to me and that I felt like I could, because most of the memories I have are of the book itself, you know, of enjoying it, but there are some obviously that you remember what you're like around your life at that time, they spoke to you at that time, so I tried to do that really, pick the ones that I could really remember strong things about, which is obviously the idea. So I have them written down. Some of the books I couldn't find on my shelves without, I know I've kept them all, but I couldn't find them without rooting around in them. So I'm going to try and insert pictures of them. So we're going to see how that goes, because, you know, I'm still working on the whole editing thing, and I've just come back from work, in case you couldn't tell, so that's why I look a little bit dishevelled. But here we go. So the first one that I immediately thought of was The Princess Diaries by Meg Cabot. And this is a series that, I mean, I've always been a reader, but I can honestly say this is the first series that really absorbed me. And as soon as I finished the first book, I went out and I had to get the second book. And I remember it because I was actually... me, my mum and my nan, or really, you know, and my little brother and my granddad, we used to take sort of regular trips into town on like a Saturday, look around the shops, etc. And I remember we went into WH Smith's and I was looking at the books. It wasn't a time where I would buy books all the time. I must have been really quite small, maybe 10, if not younger. And I was looking at the books and I was like, oh mum, you know, Princess Diaries, I really, really want this. And she's like, oh, you know, you won't read it. And I'm like, no, I will read it. And so they did buy it for me. I think my nan bought it for me because, you know, I was a nanny's girl, and she bought it for me. And I remember that I went home and I read it and I just absolutely, I thought it was fantastic. I fell in love with it, and I begged them to take me back to buy the next books that were out, and I think I could buy like the next 2 or something, but the rest, they weren't out yet. And that was the first series where I got like waiting for the next book to be released, you know, every year. And I think it was the 6th book that my nan actually, Meg Cabot, came to the UK and she actually did a book signing like 20 minutes down the road at a shopping mall. You'll probably see in vlogs, I still go there with Beth, it's called Castle Point. And my nan sort of rang up and sort of pre-ordered a copy, like a pre-signed copy, and we went to pick it up and Meg Cabot was, you know, still there. And so I queued, even though my nan had bought me the signed book. We queued just so I could meet her and she could personalise it. And I always remember meeting Meg Cabot, you know, with my mum and my nan, because they took me. So The Princess Diaries, the first book has a special place in my heart because I remember going to town with my family and actually I remember buying it. But the series as a whole, I remember my nan, you know, doing that for me and getting it signed. And I remember that year with the signed copy, we used to have sort of a family Christmas meal before Christmas, with sort of family, friends and those kind of people. And I remember one year that we went to the restaurant and I took the book with me and I read it at dinner. I know it was so rude of me, but I did it because that's how much I loved the series. So yeah. you guys probably know that this book is going to be in here. Similar to the Princess Diaries, one of my bookish memories is reading Ella Enchanted by GAIL, CARSON and LEVINE. And I remember hunting this book down. I remember I took it out of the library and it had the movie cover on it because I really liked Anne Hathaway because she was Mia in the Princess Diaries in the Disney film, and obviously I really loved the book of that, and then they made the movie and Anne Hathaway was, you know, the Princess Diaries, and I saw the book cover that had Anne Hathaway on it for Ella Enchanted in the library. I was like, oh, what's this? So I took it home and I started reading it, and this book completely absorbed me. It was amazing. It's like, you know, a fairy tale. It's basically a fairy tale, and I remember being completely absorbed by it. I remember again going out with the family. We went to the park, and I remember staying in the car and reading it. I remember taking it to my nan and granddad's for a sleepover. I remember lying in the top bunk with the book in front of my face. I remember defying my mum because I was reading it, I don't know, age 14 maybe a bit older, maybe 15, something like that. I remember defying her because I still had a bedtime, and I remember I snuck my bedroom light on it because I had 2 chapters left. I was like, I can't not know what happens. I've only got 2 chapters left, and I just remember being obsessed by it. And then the movie came out, and I was like, this is okay, but it's not what I read in the book. And I remember like getting really indignant that I was like, this is not what I read. And I remember, yeah, being quite indignant about that. But yeah, Ella Enchanted. I have really strong memories of reading that. The next book that I have bookish memories of is Twilight by Stephenie Meyer. And much like with Jen, this book has a special place in my heart. I'll always love Twilight, and I know so many people bash on it now. So many people that did like it suddenly hate it. And I have a lot to be thankful for because of Twilight, because before Twilight I didn't really read a lot of YA. Like, I read The Princess Diaries, and Ella Enchanted could be considered sort of YA/middle grade kind of. But, you know, that wasn't the bulk of what I was reading. I was reading more adult books at that time. And Twilight came out, and I credit Twilight with actually starting my blog and my booktube channel, because reading Twilight made me go online and look for more things like it. And that's how I found book communities like GOODREADS. Booktube was fairly small at the time, but that's how I found it. And, you know, blogging, etc., because I went in search of people's thoughts on Twilight and what they had read after it. And that's when I decided to, you know, throw my 2 cents in, because I saw people doing the same. And I remember reading Twilight. I was coming to the end of my first year at college after leaving school. And it was in the supermarket, and I picked up the back of it, and I was like, don't know, and I put it down. And then I thought about it, and I was at college, and I text my mum. I was like, oh, are you going shopping this week? And she went, yeah. I was like, can you see if they've got this book in the supermarket still, because I kind of regret not picking it up. And she did. She picked it up for me, and I got home, and it was the movie cover, because the movie was coming out, because Twilight wasn't really a big thing here in the UK until the upcoming release of the movie. I'd never seen it anywhere before. And it had the movie cover on it, and I was like, I'm going to read this. And it was so easy to read, and it was so unlike anything I'd ever read before. I hadn't read anything paranormal. I hadn't read anything, with vampires, werewolves, and an ordinary girl. And I mean, I was the age that Bella was. As I was reading each book, I was her age. So I felt kind of connected to the character in that way. She made some poor decisions, but then what character doesn't, most of the time? And I just absolutely fell in love with it. I've always been a sucker for romance. And, it was obviously a really cheesy romance, which I fully admit that I love. And I just remember completely loving it. And again, I remember saying to my mum, I need the other books. When I came to the end of it, I was just like, there are more books out. I've Googled it. And I need these other books. And Mum was like, did you really like it that much? I didn't think that vampire books were really your thing. I was like, no. Neither did I, but they're really good. And she took me into Poole, into WH Smith, the same place where I bought the Princess Diaries, and they had them on offer, and New Moon and Eclipse, because they were in paperback, were like buy one get one half price, and Breaking Dawn had literally just been released and it was in hardback, and my mum was like, are you sure you want that, because it won't match, because I was all about, you know, the matching paperbacks and actually waiting for books to be released in paperback so that they, you know, will match. And I was like, no, I need it, no, I'm not waiting for the paperback, no, I need it. And my mum just looked at me, she's like, that's very unlike you. And I remember they were really quite heavy, and I remember carrying them home, and it was in the run up to Christmas. I remember this. I remember coming home because my mum was like, you know, if you bought everyone's Christmas presents, I was like, yeah, these are me, these are mine though. These are my Christmas presents to myself. Because I remember, I think we had the Christmas tree was up and stuff. So yeah, I remember my mum actually taking me into Paul so I could get these books. So I have fond memories of obviously the series itself. I have fond memories because it basically sparked my booktube channel, because I really don't think that I would be here without having read that, and I have just really cool memories of going and getting them with my mum, and she actually taking me to get them, bless her. I think she's had quite enough of me. Another book that I have great bookish sort of memories of is Throne of Glass by Sarah J. Maas. And I have fond memories of this one because it was a book that I received an ARC of, and it was probably the first book, like I would say, like that's really blossomed into a massive global success that I've actually received an ARC of, and I read an ARC of, and I remember it because not only was I completely absorbed by the story, and I'm still reading the series now, obviously it's still going, but I read it at a time in my life where I was quite down. Not to bring, you know, a whole complete downer on this video, but I was reading it at a time in my life when I was quite depressed and very low, I'll be honest with you guys. I'd left college, I'd finished my A-levels, and I'd kind of got bored with my A-levels to a certain degree, and I wasn't going to go off to do university because I'd done so many years of education that I was kind of just fed up and I wanted to have a job. So I was desperately job searching, and it was that old catch-22, you know, you need experience to get a job, but you need to get a job to get experience, and I was just getting rejected on, like, you know, a daily basis, and it was just really hard on the self-esteem. And I remember just being so down and almost on the verge of tears, really, at that period in my life. And I got sent this book for review, and it said somewhere on the ARC about how it was like a Cinderella inspired fantasy, so it wasn't a retelling, but it was inspired by Cinderella. And I was like, oh, I love Cinderella inspired things, you know, I love GAIL, CARSON, LEVINE, Ella Enchanted, I love sort of Ever After, the film with Drew Barrymore. So I was like, you know what, this might be something that I enjoy. And I remember curling up, I think it was in bed that I started it, and I started reading it, and it just transported me away from all of my problems. For the time that I had the book open, my sort of world ceased to exist. I existed in that book, and I just wasn't worried when I was reading that book. My thoughts were just purely on the book. They weren't worrying about anything else, thinking about anything else, and I just concentrated on that book. I got completely absorbed by the characters, and I wasn't a huge fantasy reader at the time, not that I am now, but I have read more fantasy books, and a bit like with Twilight, it was kind of the first book along those lines that I'd read, sort of fantasy wise, and it made me look at other things, and I remember it lifting me reading that book. And then I came on here and I recorded my video of it where I couldn't sort of praise it enough, and it was just, it made me happy, and I remember the experience of reading it very, very well. So yeah, Another book that I have quite strong bookish memories of is, I can't remember who the author is, but I shall find out. It's a book called The Maiden on the Moor. And I remember when I was small, I mean we're talking first school, every week we took as a class a trip to the library because it was sort of 10 minutes down the road, and you know how you go out with in your class, where you go out in pairs and you walk down the road, and we used to go into the library each week and we could sit down and obviously read a book. And every time that we went, I always checked to see if this book was in and hadn't been checked out, and it was The Maiden on the Moor. And I remember it having really kind of, now that I think about it, eerie illustrations, but they were just something about them I found really striking. And it's about this maiden who, I think 2 brothers discover her on the moor. She sort of mysteriously appears, and I think one of them nurses her back to health, and falls in love with her. But I think there's some sort of I think she's, I can't quite remember because obviously it is years since I found this book, and she can't stay, so there's something magical about her, and she gets his dog to murder her, I think. I may have to try and track down this book because, like I say, it's been such a long time since I read it. But I can remember the illustrations, and I can remember going with the class and basically each week checking that this book was there and looking at the illustrations and reading it as well. But the illustrations were just beautiful, and something about them made me wish that I could draw them, and they were just stunning illustrations. And I will try and find the book, I think. And the last book that I want to talk about is Acid by Emma Pass. And I remember this book really, really well because it was my first ever buddy read, and I buddy read it with my bookish bestie Ryan from Ryan Reads Books, and Emma, I think, was she Emma Loves Books? Emma Reads Books, something along those lines. And like I say, it was my first buddy read, and we had sort of a Google Hangout, and we must have been online for about 5 or 6 hours trying to decide on a book to read. We all came up with lists of suggestions, and then we kind of went through them, and we ended up not going with any of the books on our original list, and we went with Acid by Emma Pass. And I remember that hangout because it was so funny. I ached from laughing so hard. My voice was like practically gone. I was hoarse. We laughed ourselves silly, and then we finally picked a book, and we were like, okay, so we started it, and the book was amazing. It's a standalone kind of dystopian novel, and it's set in the UK, and it was just amazing. It was fast paced. It was full of surprises. It kept you going, like turning the pages just constantly. And so yeah, the book was an absolute amazing book, and I don't hear enough about it on YouTube. And then we all loved it, and then we did our live hangout to discuss the book, and I remember talking about it, and Ryan and I actually watched the video back a couple of weeks ago, and oh my god, it was so cringy to watch it back, but at the time we had such a good time, and yeah, it was just sort of just affirmed everything that I loved about BookTube, really. And that's quite a nice memory, because not only is the book amazing that I still think of it even now, but the hangout and reading it with them and all of us enjoying it equally is a really, really great bookish memory. So those are my bookish memories, guys. I hope this video wasn't too gushy, but thanks so much for watching. I would like to tag Ryan from Ryan Reads Books, even though I know he won't get and record the video, and Dan from Book Disorders. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you all soon. Happy reading.